Welcome, everyone, to Greatness Glory podcast. I want to talk about AI and human intelligence. This is a hot topic that's going on, and the destiny of all of us human beings is in many ways intertwined with what's happening with AI right now. I had another episode that I talked about AI itself, more than one actually. Here, I want to talk about the human intelligence. Everybody thinks AI is so intelligent. And the reason for that is because people have never explored their own intelligence. What if I told you that the human brain and mind has the capacity that no AI has yet? And maybe will never have. In many of the ancient traditions, practitioners such as in systems like yoga, have proven that the level of human intelligence is way more than what people take it to be. So, if I just talk about the history and stories where yogis and Buddhist monks and shamans have shown tremendous amount of brain power, you can either believe it or disbelieve it and say that's just fiction. But other than talking for a few minutes about it, I want to give you some practical insights on what you really can do based on ancient and modern science to really increase your intelligence. And whatever I say here, very much most of it is proven by my own experience. For more than 20 years, I have done very regular practices of meditation and yoga, breathing practices, and such that has proven to me that it has the potential to increase your mental power. Let me put it this way for you. If you go and study a lot of those traditions, you see that the power of brain and intelligence, the way that they analyzed it and explained it in those systems is way more vast and more comprehensive than what we understand from human intelligence. Our understanding of human intelligence is still very little. And the reason for that is that we are all for objective sciences and we barely even pay attention to what's possible with us, within us. The scientists, the neuroscientists, doctors, they have researched the outer layer of what we call a human being, the brain and the body, in a limited way or in the lab. And they have discovered many things, especially about how can intelligence be increased, how can we increase our brain power. There's a lot of talk going on about brain hacking, nootropics, and things like that. There's a ton of data we have in neuroscience about how can you increase your brain power and your attention and all those things. But that's only the tip of iceberg. It's just the surface layer. I have studied the lives of hundreds of yogis and people who have practiced, you can say, occulting, esoteric things, and yogic practices. And there's a lot of history about such people that have such a tremendous ability in their mind and such a high intelligence, which is for us inhuman. We think they are superhuman, but they're not really superhuman. They're the humans that have prioritized exploring what's possible within this human body and mind and energy body, or whatever you want to call it, soul. And we have not done that. We are mostly very busy just fulfilling our needs and find some pleasures here and there and become successful and all those things, which is all mostly external and barely internal about the human mind. So when I speak about the human mind and the brain, I'm not just talking about popping up some pills or, NZT pills, just like in that Limitless movie, which became very famous and suddenly become very intelligent. I'm talking about how can you really use your mind, such as in meditation and concentration practices, use your breath, such as in breath work and yoga, and use your body to increase your intelligence. And I'm going to talk about it from the perspective of those traditions and my understanding of the human intelligence. If I want to start with a very simple example that a lot of people might never have even thought about it. I have realized a very simple thing that your diet and your digestion has way more effect on your level of concentration than what you can imagine. People think that for becoming focused and increasing your cognitive power, you have to take some stimulant or some Adderall or whatever people use to increase their intelligence. And these supplements, especially most of the synthetic ones, for sure they increase your cognitive power, but at a cost of draining your energy and resources and overstimulating your brain. You might have heard people said, "Oh, I did this. I think my brain is fried." And it's true because when you take those supplements, it pushes your cognitive power to more than what you can really have as a baseline, and then you crash. Anybody who has ever used any of those substances knows this. And the real downside and side effect of all those supplements comes after long-term use. And this is nothing new. In older times, people have used the herbal, nootropics and things like that. And anybody knows that when you start something new, even something like caffeine, let's say you haven't had a cup of coffee for 1 month, you see it's very different because your baseline of cognitive power and focus changes. And when you take that cup of coffee, it seems like, wow, it's so good, right? And this is true with many other things, even, nicotine in tobacco and other stuff. And then people who have used psychedelics, which is a hot topic these days. It's a very helpful thing when used consciously for healing. There's a lot of data that shows some psychedelics like, psilocybin mushrooms and other stuff, they can treat a long-term depression that the patient has failed to address even after years of psychotherapy and standard, depression medication and SSRIs. But why is that? You can never really suddenly increase your cognitive power with something externally that you take, whether herbal or synthetic. It's for a very simple reason. And for us to understand that, we need to increase our understanding of the human nature, not limited to just what we call mainstream science. And then we say, okay, the mainstream science is absolute and God, and whatever scientists say, then it's the absolute thing. But it's not. You just have to think about it for a few minutes and you see that whatever we call mainstream science is just a state of collective consciousness today, and things keep changing regularly every year, and these days every day. And then who decides what is mainstream? Obviously, the people in power decide this is the mainstream thing with science in medicine. This is the standard treatment. And there are many, many thousands of scientists and doctors who say something against it, and a lot of it, disappear or they're shut down, or you know their medical license gets canceled and all those kind of things. So don't even get me started on that. But getting back to the main subject, so I can give you something that benefits you. Our understanding of human nature is that we are just like a material being, and everything that's happening, our brain power and all those things, it is just hormones and neurotransmitters and what's happening materially. One big thing that is missing today, and science is becoming to understand it, and many scientists are open to it. And other than that, in every single ancient culture, in every single spot in the world, this has been shown and explained in utmost details. The ancient Indians called it prana, and there is literally hundreds of thousands of books or pages written on it. There are millions of reports by people who practice things that is related to, prana or life force energy, something which is not necessarily physical. And ancient Chinese called it qi, which is life force. They developed systems like Tai Chi, which I've been practicing for many years, which is about developing and circulating energy in your body. And they also have qigong. In Japan, they call it ki. And you see in martial arts, it's a famous thing that someone works years to develop their inner power and energy, and they can do extraordinary things in karate, in aikido, in many of those systems. Even in Indonesia, there are systems related to development of inner power, which is actually more advanced. We can say the concept exists in the Old Testament, the New Testament, in many religions, in Zoroastrianism, in shamanic systems. So every single place you go, you find it. And I think one sign of intelligence is that when you see something, the same truth repeated in many, many, many different places, in many different ages, if you're an intelligent person, you will never say, no, this is all nonsense and some hocus pocus. There's no such thing as energy and all those things. So I don't want to make this podcast about proving that energy exists. And I'll talk more about for those of you who are open to listen to this more. So why am I talking about energy? Because increasing your brain power is not only about best diet and supplements. If your level of energy, let's say prana, is not strong, none of those things work. Let's say if somebody is very weak, in all these systems of medicine, ancient Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, and shamanic medicines, and many other systems, very important principle is having a high level of prana or energy, life force. And every traditional practitioner of those systems know that just by mechanically treating your body or taking some vitamins, it's not going to work to increase your level of energy. And there are people who are very sick, and then they go and spend 1 week in nature, and then they feel change that I can say no supplements can do. And I had this experience many times, and you had this experience many times for sure. And people go and do something like gardening, and they feel like their life is transformed and the energy changes and all those things. This is the life force, and it exists in abundance in nature, but we absorb and we store just a little bit of it. And the ancient systems that I mentioned, like in China, Japan, and yoga, they have elaborate systems of increasing this energy, this life force. And it's not only about increasing it, it's also about directing it and balancing it. And it's a complex subject. I'm not going to get into all the details here, but I'm going to give you the foundation for understanding it. So that's why the life force is important. If somebody is sick, as I mentioned, if you were to pump them with food, that's not going to heal them. As a matter of fact, it's very interesting. I heard that all animals, when they are sick, actually they fast. And human beings, and I used to laugh on this. For example, my aunt, when in her family somebody was sick, she used to pump the kids with all type of foods, and they were blowing up. And I was like, even as a teenager, I was like, what are you doing? When you're sick, your body has the limited amount of energy which you need to protect it. You need to rest, you need to breathe, you need to go in nature to allow the energy that is gone to be replenished. So prana, or life force, is the key to health and well-being and increasing all of your abilities physically and mentally. There's no question about that. And if you practice something like yoga and breathing practices for even a short time, you'll see what I'm talking about. And this energy can be felt for sure. The people who practice the Tai Chi, qigong, the breathing practices, and yoga, they feel it after some time. And, the basis of the acupuncture and acupressure is just this energy, to balance this energy in your system. So the way that the energy works is like this. Imagine the whole body is like an electrical circuit with many different parts, like a computer. Obviously, if we take away the electricity from the computer, the whole computer is dead and useless. That's how human body also works. As a matter of fact, a lot of people use the example of electricity to talk about the life force, but it's not the same thing. So I think I explained enough to show that this life force, let's just call it something like electricity, is very important. And I'm going to get back to this concept of life force and how it's going to help you become more intelligent. So when we talked about that electrical circuit, like a computer, if you have understanding of the electronics and computers, even a little bit, actually it helps you to understand this very well. The truth is that the computers and electronics are just a limited replication of how the human body works. There's something, just to confuse you a little bit more, in the computer sciences, which we call overclocking a CPU, or the processor of the computer, or a GPU, the graphical processing unit, the graphical card, or whatever you call it. And this has been around for many years. When someone plays with the settings in a hardware, like let's say the processor, and increases the voltage to achieve a faster processing power, and it's called overclocking. And I like that example, and it applies very well to what I want to talk about, the intelligence. Just the same way that when you increase power to, let's say, the graphic card, it increases its processing power and speed. When you increase power to brain and certain areas of the body, or call it chakras or whatever, it increases your processing power, your cognitive power. And it's amazing. Everybody loves to do it. And the truth is that a lot of supplements and herbs, they also do the same thing, but they don't give you the energy. They just force release your own energy. That's why people get hooked to some of these substances, because they want to be like that all the time, and it doesn't work. And that brings me to very important topic, that when you do that overclocking thing and increase the energy, the hardware becomes hot. And these people who do that, they use a lot of elaborate cooling techniques to cool down the hardware. Some of them even use liquid nitrogen or things like that. Otherwise, the system dies if you don't cool it down. And the same thing, a lot of people know. If you ever overused any of these stimulants, you know that your brain gets hot. Sometimes you get a headache because it's too much power going to your brain. So the answer is not to send a lot of energy to your brain suddenly, but to upgrade your hardware. So in terms of computers, you just take it out and you put a more expensive graphic card. But in human beings, you're not going to replace your brain. You're going to work on developing its power. And I'm going to start talking about that with the foundation. Before we even get into yoga and breathing practices or some magical techniques that's going to accomplish that, you should know that whenever we talk about developing human potential, personal development, health, and especially spirituality, the foundation is the most important thing. And you see, I talk about this foundation so much, and people still, they don't want to get it. They keep ignoring it. And then they wonder why things that they want to change is not changing, why their health is not getting better. So, what is the foundation? I specifically wrote a book called Art of Balance about this exact thing. And by the way, you can download this valuable book for completely free by going to greatnessglory.com, and you'll see a section that you can put your email address and download it. Why this foundation is important? If you don't address the foundation and you keep doing the breathing practices and taking even all the supplements and nootropics, none of them is going to really work, especially long term. If your sleep is not good, no supplement is going to fix that. If you're having a horrible diet and a lot of processed food and overeating, no supplement is going to make you intelligent. So I want to go quickly over some of the most important things which I also mentioned in Art of Balance and tell you why are they important. There are many important factors. Let's talk about the sleep first. Sleep is very, very important and vital. You know, you can live without food for weeks. Some people have even lived without food for 7, 8, 9 weeks, and they didn't die. Some of them, they didn't even get really any, sickness or issues. But you cannot live without sleep for more than a few days. You're going to go crazy. And the reason for that is because when we sleep, our body regenerates. And there is a ton of science behind this, and it's modern science also. When we sleep, our body comes out of the fight or flight mode and stress mode and regenerates the tissues, balances the hormones, the neuronal regeneration happens, and all those things. And from the energetic perspective, when we sleep, we actually, in a way, we plug into the universal energy and we recharge. That's why sleep is so important. Another part of it is because when you sleep, your mind balances your mental energies and your thoughts and your emotions. That's why a lot of time, a lot of people have this experience when you have not slept well for 1 day, 2 days, you feel irritable and you feel more compulsive and all those things. So sleep is very important. And if I want to say it even more correctly, it's not about falling unconscious, it's about getting deep rest, because there are people, especially the spiritual practitioners, yogis, that never sleep really, but they rest for sure. A sleep is a state of mind. What we're seeking is deep rest, which I even mentioned before. There are practices like deep relaxation, like yoga nidra, which is believed that if you do like half an hour of yoga nidra in the right way, it's equal to like 2 hours of sleep. And there's a lot of history about that also. You can search about it and learn. So, first, you need to adjust your sleep and read The Art of Balance. I talked about it a lot. The key things is that you need to get enough sleep and you need to get into bed and come out of bed on a set time rather than a chaotic schedule that changes. The second most important thing, and these are all really most important things, is diet. And this one, I don't need to really talk about it. Even in modern science, there's a ton of data on this. And I want to just give you the most important things that comes to my mind right now, which is if you want to increase your level of energy, the prana life force and health, prioritize eating fresh and less processed and less cooked food. That's it. Obviously, you should eat high quality organic food and those kind of stuff, but you don't need me to remind you of that. Why is this important? For a few reasons. The cooked food, especially the horrible ones, which is like McDonald's grade food and processed fried food, is completely, we can say, empty of life force. You see, everything that is alive in many ways is alive in a balanced temperature, like these plants or me and you. If you were to cook any of us, including the plants, none of us would survive. You basically drain the life force and kill the organism. So the same thing happens to food. The food that is overly processed has much less energy. That's why it's important for us to eat high quality food, which is more fresh. So you don't need to become a raw vegan or something like that, but you should take a lot of, fruits and vegetables. And if you take more fruits and vegetables than what you take as cooked food, you will see a significant difference within a few days or maybe 1 or 2 weeks. You'll see that your level of alertness and sharpness increases. And for many people, even their need for sleep decreases. But most people won't like it because we are a generation of people that we love lethargy. We just want to have some drinks or smoke or something and then just go to a sleep like state and just not think about anything, and all of those things drain us. But if you really value being sharp and energetic, you'll see that it's a better state of being. You just have to manage your energy now and see how you can channelize it in the best way. So that's about diet. The third most important thing, which is critical, is physical movement. I'm not going to call it exercise necessarily because exercise means different things for different people. So you don't necessarily have to start going to gym if you're not doing any type of exercise. But the reason that body keeps living is because it's moving. And the more it moves, the more energetic and healthy it becomes. And even in Art of Balance, I mentioned this, that one of the top scientists in the world said that if we could make exercise and convert it into a pill and give it to people, it would be the most powerful medication that exists, because nothing can replace it. Just like nothing can replace sleep or good diet, also nothing can replace activity. And the reason most people don't exercise is because their mindset is wrong. Everybody thinks, oh, I need to go to gym or do something like run 30 minutes, 1 hour a day. And they want to start doing it day one. But if you really decide to change your lifestyle out of respect for yourself, if you value being happy and healthy and have a good mood and good brain power, then start by walking 1 minute a day. Start by walking 10 minutes a day, whatever that works for you, and increase 1 minute a day or a week. And this is a ancient Japanese principle called kaizen, which is very famous, and I love it. It changed my life really. I used to be very lazy about many things, but when I realized that I can start something small and just increase it as I feel like, I can accomplish anything. It's very difficult to exercise in the gym, 1 hour every day for a lot of people. But what if you just show up in the gym? What if you go on the treadmill for 5 minutes and just say, bye, I go home? And then next week, add 1 minute. And then next week, add another move. In 6 months, you will see that you're doing the exercises that you could never think that I was able to do it without any resistance. So there's no excuse for not exercising. And I don't like the tactic when somebody like a coach like me says something to put a fear in you. Oh, if you don't exercise, your life is going to be ruined. But unfortunately, that's the truth. If you don't exercise, then you get more sick. You have to pay more for all type of doctors. Everybody knows that, so I'm just gonna move on. So to keep the podcast short, I'm not gonna explore all the art of balance foundational principles. Please go and read it or listen to the audiobook. They're both for free, available on my website. So after you address the foundation, the sleep, exercise, and all those things, then only you can start working on increasing your level of energy. And it is best done by following a systematic way of doing it, like a yogic system in the right way. And then you also should do it in the right way and find the right teacher. I regularly post a lot of content on these things, and I'm working on creating multiple courses on it, which you can learn a lot from it. So follow me on social media or subscribe to the YouTube channel so you don't miss them. So as I talked about the life force, and I said, first you need to address what's draining your energy, let's say lack of sleep or bad diet. If you don't address that, it's like you have a barrel and you want to, fill this barrel with some water. And then you keep filling it with water or, I don't know, whiskey if you like. And then there are holes in it. And as you keep water, putting water in it, it keeps draining. And no amount of watering it is going to compensate for the bad drainage where the energy is just being wasted. That's one of the most important principles of health, success, uh, spirituality, and everything really. So first address that. So you addressed it, and then you want to increase your, mental power. You need to learn a proper way of meditation and don't exaggerate it. Don't think this is something difficult. You can start again with 1 minute or 5 minutes of meditation, something simple as watching your natural breathing. And people think, oh, that's it. That's one of the most powerful types of meditation. If you dedicate yourself to do it for 1 year, your life and your destiny will change. I have zero doubts about this. So when I talked about meditation, I'm talking about a method to train your mind. See, mind is like a wild horse. And if you ever worked with the horses, you know that there's a specific procedure and it takes time to tame the horse. In the same way, you cannot just say, from today, my mind is tamed by, you got to work on it. So this is why meditation is important. Again, if you do the right type of meditation and increase your power of one pointedness of the mind and concentration, and I talked about different systems of meditation in one of earlier episodes, maybe it's episode 4 or 5. You can look it up. So we addressed the foundation, and then we addressed how you should work on improving your power of concentration and taming your mind. Now we're going to get into deeper layer of it, which is even more interesting, getting back to the subject of energy. If everything within this body works better when you have more life force energy, then it makes sense that you should increase the level of energy that you have in your body and then channelize it, let's say, to your brain to increase its power. And this is not going to happen in a month or even in a year. It's a slow process. That's why I said none of those supplements and pills is going to suddenly make you more intelligent without side effects. But if you do it in the right way, it works very well actually. After a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, you'll see a lot of things change, especially if you're doing the meditation and then work on increasing your energy. How do you increase your energy? In a human system, the key to controlling, directing, and balancing the energy is breath. In the yogic systems and in many ancient traditions, the breath is considered as a link, a medium between your soul and your body. That's why, somebody dies, they say, okay, he took his last breath. The life force leaves the body and the person dies. Now try to fill the dead body with all type of supplements and best diet and magical supplements. None of them is working, because the most important thing that keeps us alive is this life force. That's the power of life. Even in the book of Genesis, in the Old Testament, it says that God created the man out of mud or whatever, and then he blew the breath of life into that body, and man became alive. And no system has talked about this better than the ancient Indian systems of yoga and those kind of systems. So you increase your level of energy by learning the proper ways of breathing practices. And if I tell you that you don't even need to start with anything complex or learn anything difficult, and it's very simple, you might say, no, you're making it very easy. But believe me, if you just practice something called as abdominal breathing or yogic breathing, where you draw in more air in a controlled and relaxed way, and you practice that every day, that alone can change your life and your level of vitality and energy. So in a normal breathing, we use maybe 30-40% of our capacity. But if you really learn to breathe deeply from belly, the way that newborn babies breathe, because they are much more intelligent than us, and then we, train them and we mess their nature, and then the things change. If you learn to breathe like a baby, like your belly comes out when you breathe deeply, and you, let's say, with a ratio of like 4-4-4, 4 inhale, 4 holding, and 4 exhale, just to begin with. There are many, many types of breathing exercises. It's a very vast science, but starting with this can change your life if you do it for a few months. So this will help you to energize your body, and the life force exists in the environment, especially more in nature and in food and in sunlight. Another important thing is sunlight, actually. So we absorb it by doing these breathing practices. And I'm just touching on the surface of things here. You see, I'm telling you what works. I'm not teaching all the details of it here because that would take many books to talk about. So again, build the foundation, learn to control your mind, and learn to breathe the right way and do the breathing practices. And I promise I do my best to teach you a lot on this when I have more time on Greatness Glory. So stay tuned. So another way to increase your life force, which is more esoteric, is the use of mantras. And that is, I can say, even a more complex science than breathing. But if I want to talk to you about it just in a very brief way, everything in universe is a vibration. Both religion and science have come to this understanding that everything is an energy and vibration. It's like a sound, you know? So this body is energy vibrating. Einstein said that energy and matter are the same thing, and it's true. It's matter is just another more gross level of energy. So if everything has a vibration, including this body and the gemstones and crystals and all those things, then a specific arrangement of sounds, which are just energy, which if you study about it, you'll understand it in a much deeper way. They can be used to also increase your level of life force and energy. The only system that has explored this in a crazy amount of really details is the science of yoga, tantra, Hinduism, and all those systems. Even though the same thing like mantras exist in some other traditions like Sufism, it's a bit different. So maybe I do an episode about mantras later. But here's the thing about the mantras. Specific sounds, they harmonize your body and mind and increase your level of vitality. So there are millions of mantras for different purposes. Again, not a topic for this podcast. But the most famous mantra in the world is Om. Om is not a religious thing. Om is not a Hindu thing. Om actually exists in many, many religions, and it's not related to even God in the way that you think about it. Om is just a vibration, a sound. People go to this sound bath, sound healing thing. Somebody is like playing a Tibetan bowl or something, and they feel like, wow, my life is transformed. I feel different. It's because of the energy. You can also generate energy from within. Let's say you select Om to chant or any mantra, you know, Om Namo Narayanaya or the Hare Krishna mantra, the famous, you know, mantra. And you decide to chant this for 5 minutes a day. That is going to increase your level of your life force. You can also combine it with the breathing practice. That's one way of doing it. Or you can just take a rosary or mentally chant it. So let's say if you were to do that 4-4-4 breathing, you could do like this. Instead of saying 1, 2, 3, 4 in your mind, you could say Om, 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 and inhale. And then the same thing for holding the breath and exhalation. And again, there's not enough time for me to explain why these things work, but they work. What is the use of me even explaining, you know, 500 pages of science to prove that something works if you don't experience it yourself? Is that more valuable, or if you even don't know the science and you did it for 1 year and you see the effects for yourself? So I suggest you try all these things and learn more from authentic sources. and it can change your life. If you have any questions, for sure, put it in comments. I always try my best to answer all the questions. So these were some practical information on how you can really increase your brain power. Lastly, if we really want to talk about the most powerful way of getting there, if you really think about achieving superhuman intelligence, then we have to talk about what's called Kundalini. Kundalini, or what many people call by different names in different cultures, the inner fire, is an energy which is latent in our body that, when awakened by the proper ways after preparation, for some people it takes many years, that is when it can really make the biggest difference. And it's not something that you can achieve in one day. The Kundalini is the most powerful force in human body that can activate your energy, your chakras, energy centers, your nervous system in a way that really makes you, let's say, superhuman. And my teachings is not about teaching you to become superhuman. I just can't find a better word to tell you that. But it's all about achieving your highest potential. So I have a couple of episodes about Kundalini and chakras. Please go and watch them. That's going to give you much better understanding. But the Kundalini is like this. In a normal way, let's say, we use maybe 1% of our energy. Just like many people say, oh, we only use 5% of the potential of our brain. But in order for us to really get to that higher percentage of the brain potential, we need much more energy. And that's why Kundalini is important. When Kundalini is activated, you achieve a lot of energy, and it's not going to make you a super intelligent person right away. That's a very, very vast science, and it definitely needs a proper teacher, because it's one of the things, again, along with the psychedelics, that can ruin your life. And I'm not saying this to scare you, but to make you study better and find the right teacher. So about this whole Kundalini thing, if you want to learn the science about it in a modern science way, there is a scientist, or there was, called Yitzhak Bento. If you search him in Google, this guy has done a tremendous amount of insane work on understanding this Kundalini energy and the nervous system. And he basically says that this awakening of Kundalini and chakras basically means that one can achieve evolution. And this is what yoga says, that you can achieve a faster evolution of your nervous system in a shorter way. Basically, the science of yoga, like Kriya Yoga, says the same thing, that if we go by the rhythm of nature, it takes thousands of years for a human body to become much, much more advanced, to have a much more advanced brain and more powers and things like that. But Kundalini is the energy that can get you there in a lifetime. And it's easier said than done. That's not really an easy path. That needs really a lot of dedication in life and walking on the right path with the right teacher. So that Kundalini is just like that, in accessing that level of energy. And when with the right practices like Kriya Yoga and breathing practices and things like that, you channelize that energy to brain, which actually happens. That's the whole point of Kundalini, the energy that comes through your spine and activates your energy centers. Then your brain becomes more powerful. As a matter of fact, this topic of chakras, every chakra that we talk about is related to a specific region in the brain. That's why in the esoteric systems, they talk about this chakra becoming activated, you achieve this ability, this power, or all those things. So let's wrap up. Build the foundation, things like sleep and diet and exercise. Learn to direct and control your mind, tame your mind. Learn the breathing practices so you can increase your energy. And that is itself is a preparation for awakening of the Kundalini. And you can also learn about mantras and all these things. This, in a nutshell, is the roadmap of how you can achieve superhuman intelligence. And let me share some of my own experience with this in a, I can say, conservative way, as I'm allowed to speak about it, because a lot of it's private. If I have not experienced this, I wouldn't talk about it with confidence. And there's been many, many times, and there are still many times that in a deep state of silence and meditation, when I use my mind and brain to think about something, it is like I am using a different brain, like Einstein level brain or even more, which is hundreds of times, maybe thousands of times faster. That's exactly like that overclocking thing that I mentioned, that you have a much, much more stronger brain. This experience cannot be explained, but you will see if you even experience it for once, you are a totally different person. You have such an intelligence that it cannot even be explained in a logical way. Your brain is capable of understanding the most complex things, but right now we are using very little of it. In order for us to use more of it, we need to work our way towards it. And then you'll see that you had such a enormous brain power and intelligence that you'll think we are aliens to other aliens that we call aliens. We are very, very, intelligent beings, but we never explore it. So I hope you benefited from learning about this. And if you have any questions, just make a comment or just press the like button and subscribe, please, so I can share more of these things. And I'll see you in the next episode.